It's really important to lead with kindness and be kind to people, because someone can be kind on the surface, but behind the scenes they could be like kind of a snake. They can be two-faced, and then the other way around too. They could seem really mean and really rude, and stuck up. But once you get to know them, it's like, wait, you're actually really cool. You just have your guard up a little bit, but I like you. So I've witnessed both, and I think I've been those two people myself, two other people, if that makes sense. I know it's very yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of the Oh My Curry Goodness podcast. I'm your host Hamza Islam, and on each episode of the podcast, I talk to Gen Zers from different industries about their story and the experiences that have shaped them into who they are today. When I created this podcast, one of the biggest things that I really wanted to do with each of my guests is to, in a way, break them down and focus on what they are, which is a human being. And the reason why I created Oh My Curry Goodness is when we hear stories that are really interesting or shocking, or in a way that gives you that, oh my, I can't believe you went through this moment, we say, oh my goodness. And then I added curry because it's one of my favorite foods. But I wanted to focus on what it means to be a human being from the perspective of the guest. Have them share their good and bad experiences that have shaped them into who they are today. Because storytelling is one of the few things that make human beings a human being. And so I hope you guys continue to check back each and every week to learn from incredible Gen Zers, and also, more importantly, to emphasize the importance of having an open mind. Because regardless of how much success people can have, we don't know the full story. We don't know what they went through or they're currently going through. So let's let people remember, or let's let people simply be known as human beings. Now, this week, I am speaking to Victoria Makanjuola, who is the host of the Feel Your FeelingZ Podcast, which is a podcast for Gen Z to educate, enlighten, entertain, and celebrate themselves. I literally quoted from their website so I don't get plagiarized. But I was actually a guest on Victoria's podcast, and I really enjoyed the conversation. So I wanted to, when I thought about who to have on my podcast, I thought Victoria would be a great guest because she loves talking to people. And obviously we got to support podcasters who share that same vision. So Victoria Makanjuola, thank you so much for joining Oh My Curry Goodness.
Hamza, thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here. It's a pleasure to speak with you today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
How are you feeling? That's what I always ask people on my show.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I'm feeling great. It's weird because this is one of the first few episodes back from my hiatus. So I feel a little rusty when it comes to being that interviewer, but nevertheless, it's always great to talk to people, especially those who I've obviously had the chance to know. And like I said, I was on your show, so it's always great to connect with people and just continue to learn and have a great conversation.
I agree. And it's great to see you again. I had you back on my show like December 2023. And like, I can tell you've grown so much already. Like, I think taking sporadic breaks is super helpful. Yeah. So you've grown very much, because I know last time you said you were working on like, your interviewing skills and your show. So yeah, keep doing what you're doing. Yeah.
I appreciate it. Now, I know obviously we'll talk about Feel Your FeelingZ and what the podcast has done for you personally, but I've got to ask you, because you've obviously been the host and you've been on a guest on quite a few podcasts.
Yeah.
I guess, and I've asked this to a couple of podcasters in the past. I want to know, from your opinion or from your perspective, which one do you find more anxious, or which one do you feel like you're more anxious of, being the host of your podcast or being a guest on others? Because I feel like I am more anxious when I'm on other people's podcasts, because I tend to talk for a very long, or I tend to ramble for a long time. So if you give me a question, I feel like I'll take 5 or 10 minutes to answer. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I am more anxious being a guest, I think, on other people's shows. At first it was switched. Actually, no. Yeah. I stand by that. A guest, like recently I was a guest on my uncle's podcast. He's also a podcaster and a podcast host, and he asked me to be on his podcast, and I was so nervous. But like once we got going and we started talking, like you, like I just started like talking and it just started like rolling. I think the initial invite is super like intimidating. Just getting that email like, hey, I want to have you be on my show. It's like should I act out? So should I perform? Something like you just don't know really what to do. As a host, I do still definitely get nervous. I think that kind of comes with the territory of being a podcaster because you're like balancing a lot of things at the same time. You have to have your questions right there. For me, I have my questions on the side. I'm listening. I'm active listening in case they say something. I'm like, oh, maybe I should do a follow up. Like, you know how it goes. Um, and then post production as well. Like, I'm a very big like editor and making sure everything looks right, like visually, because my show is also on YouTube. So I think both can be nerve wracking, but I think being a guest is probably scary.
One thing I will plead guilty to is I have not seen our conversation back in December. I'm the someone that
You
hates the sound of my
haven't.
here's the reason why. I hate the sound of my voice. And I've said this on previous interviews where I'm like if there was if someone were to say like, "Hey, we need someone to play Darth Vader," I think I would make a great character because my voice is so
Stop.
low. So when I have to edit my own videos, that's a pain in the butt, but I don't ever. So that's a pain. But I have not seen my any of the interviews where I've been the guest. I've been on a couple as of this recording, so it's like I haven't seen them yet, but I promise you I will see it when I have the courage to. So it's
I
it's just
I
weird because I
feel
hate the
you.
sound of my voice.
I feel you. Like I'm more of a panic submit person. Like I'm just gonna submit this and like see where it goes. I'm not really gonna look at it, especially in like the early days when I did my Misunderstood series. That was the first time I did a audio visual podcast. Before it was just my voice, and I was like, I really want to do this YouTube series, and I really just used all the tools that I had on my computer. I edit on Clipchamp, and put it on YouTube, and I was using my phone for that series. So some things just didn't like look right. I was like wearing a wig at the time. You can see like the line. And girl problems. And like it was just really cringy. And like I still can't really go back and look at those episodes because I might like cry. So yeah.
Well, one thing I would say, I don't know if I've heard it on many podcasts, and I'm sure you'll agree to this,
Mm,
where it's like if you ever find yourself cringing from past interviews or from like
mm.
past performances, it's a sign of growth because you know that you are in a better place now than you were back then. I love how I just turned into a self-help person, but that's not why I do this podcast. I am not a self-help person.
Drop the book, Hamza. Drop the book.
I want to talk about one of the things I want to talk or love talking about is the importance of understanding the things that shape you into who you are today. I mean, obviously, I know that that's a no dip Sherlock, whoops, but I really want to talk about the relationship you have with your family because I've seen in previous interviews how you've talked a lot about how they shaped you into who you are today. I think there was an article where you talked about how your confidence comes from your parents, um, especially from your mom who told you to always dream big. And here's the thing: I feel like the conversation about parents as we get older is a quote unquote funny subject because growing up, I feel like my parents have told me that a lot of people in the United States, as like when they reach 18, it's like that's it. I'm leaving my family. I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
go pursue my own dream.
Yeah.
And I can understand why some people have that mindset, but there are very few people, not like one or two, but there's like a small population that still say that even as I get older, my family still means a lot to me. Tell me about how you're able to still maintain that bond or that connection even as you get older because you're still a child. I mean, although you're older than me, you're still like their kid. And it almost and based on like what I've been able to learn from you is that even though that you're 26, they still play a big part in your life. And it's not like once you reach a certain age that you start to spend, like, I guess, for lack of a better term, less time from them or spend less time with them.
Yeah, that's a lot. Absolutely. Like they are I was gonna say my best friends and also my biggest critics too. For sure. Like my mom would always tell me, both me and my sister. So I'm the youngest of two. So it's my sister and myself. And we've always been like super close as a family. We moved a lot. We moved around a lot. We lived in Texas. I was born in Texas. We moved to Colorado and then back to Texas. So we've always been really tight knit. We had a lot of ups and downs while we were moving, and so that made us even closer. If I still don't have my own vehicle, so I do have to depend on them a lot to like take me places and whatnot. So I'm not saying it's all like rosy daisy. Like we get into it. Me and my sister were close in age, and we bump heads, but that's family for you. But my parents are definitely my biggest encouragers. They're the ones who encouraged me to go back to school when I didn't want to go back to school, to get a second degree. So I have my master's. They're like, no, go back, get another one. And I was like, nah. But then I thought about it and I was like, fine, like maybe I should go back and get another degree, but I'm gonna do it on my terms. Like, I appreciate their feedback, but I do like I'm independent. Like I'm an independent spirit. I want to think for myself. So I was like, I'm gonna choose the school and the program, and I'm gonna go for that. And they've been so supportive since then, with my schooling, even though it's online. Like when I need my space, like I need my space right now. I tell them like I need the room, like I need my space, don't bother me. And they're very respectful of that. But yeah, we went through some hard times like moving around and living in small places. So like physically, that made us like have to be really tight knit as a family. So yeah.
One thing I have asked people, especially when they've talked about growing up and I guess like through different challenges, is like what was their teddy bear moment? Or I guess what was their teddy bear experience, in the sense that an example would be, and I've used it before, which is, let's say you're little and you hear thunderstorms outside. It's as a little kid, you're most little kids would be scared of thunderstorms. But I guess growing up, I think the one thing that I kind of held on to help me feel better is if I ever had like a teddy bear that kind of, even though it's not a real thing, it's like it's helping you throughout that scary experience. Would you say in a way that your family, even during those difficult times, would you say that they're in a way your teddy bear that kind of navigated you throughout that storm? Or was there anything else that you thought of where even when you were going through difficult times, you had this thing that helped guide you even during those difficult times? I don't know if that made sense, but
Well, it's interesting because I actually have a physical teddy bear here. Like I'll show you. Literally his name is Bobo. Like this dude. So I got this teddy bear. Ironically, my dad was sick at the end of 2022 briefly. He was like in the hospital, and when he got out, we got him like this get well basket thing, and it came with like this teddy bear and like balloons were tied to it. So he didn't want it. He was about to keep the teddy bear. So I was like, oh, it's mine now. So I named him Bobo. And he reminds me of, he's a boy because he has like a tie, bow tie. But when I was a kid, there was this character, this book called Corduroy, and it was about this bear that could walk and talk. And I had used to always want like my own teddy bear. So like, yeah, but I only recently have that one since for like 2 or 3 years. So I'm trying to think of like other things. I don't know if I had physical items that I could take with me during those times. I would say, yeah, they were like my buffer because I'm the youngest. So I feel like I've always been protected, kind of like sheltered, some people will say. But sheltered in a good way from things. Um, so yeah, I would say yes. It has definitely been that for sure. When I was in college, they lived close to me when I was a freshman, at Sam Houston State. Like they were in the same city as me for like freshman, sophomore year. And then they moved back up to where we are now in North Texas and in the Dallas area. So I would say, yeah. If I think of something else, I'll let you know, Hobson.
But before we switch topics to getting to know more about the relationship you have with your podcast,
Yeah.
I do want to know if there is a pressure when it comes to making your parents proud. and it's a common question I've asked people. Whether there's pressure when representing the Gen Z generation, if there's pressure in representing, I guess, like their background or their identity or their family. And I've heard, yeah, there's some pressure, or no, not really. There's not much pressure. From your personal perspective, do you feel like there is pressure in you to making your parents proud, or do you feel like that pressure doesn't exist? Because I feel that all the time, because I do want to make them proud. Because obviously, I mean, I don't know about your background or your parents'
Yeah.
background, but my parents came from Bangladesh, where there's not that many resources, or there's not that much opportunity. So coming to the United States
Mhm.
and growing up in a country where they don't know the language, they don't know the way of living. My dad went to college in the United States, and he literally didn't know. Forget trying to get the best grades possible. It's like, how do you pay for tuition, and how do you try to adapt to an environment where everything is different from what you're accustomed to. So for me, growing up in the United States and given all that I've had, I feel like there is a certain pressure to make them proud because their way of living was different from what I am currently going through. For you, do you feel like that? Do you feel the same way, or do you not feel that pressure?
I do feel the pressure. There's pressure, absolutely. My dad is from Nigeria. He immigrated here when he was like 22, to Texas, but he had a support system while he was here, and he came as a college student, like an international student. Then he met my mom. She's Black American, and she was working at University of Texas at Dallas. So that's how they met. Um, so there's pressure on both sides because both my parents are educators, actually. So they mean business. Like even when I was little, they really emphasize like how education is like everything. Basically, you have to have an education. It was like no ifs, ands, or buts. And so I'm proud of myself for like following through on that and not becoming like a statistic, um, or a dropout, or falling into the traps that you would think a young Black African American person or young woman would fall into. And I just have to credit that to them, but I also have to give myself credit too, because like I'm the one with like with the name on the degree, like it has my name on. So yeah, I'm also very self-motivated, and I think that comes from my background. Yeah, and part of it is societal as well, and just trying to prove people wrong, which can get exhausting too. It's like you think you know me, but you don't. But yeah, I would say for sure, like it comes from my parents and wanting to make them happy, wanting to make the culture happy and proud. Because I always think there's always room for improvement, even today. Like up till today, I'm like, I got to do better. Like I got to do more. I got to do more. I'm sure you feel that too. Like there's something more I could be doing with my show. I could be doing better in my classes at work. Like it doesn't really stop. So
For
yeah,
sure. And I will give you this. I'll say this. I mean, our parents do so much to help us give that. Our parents do so much to help us really accomplish our dreams and whatever that may be. And I totally get the fact that we always got
yeah.
to continue to do more because we can't settle, or we can't just stay complacent. I also can sometimes relate to you in the sense that we sometimes have to feel like we have to prove other people wrong. And it's weird because I know you have a misunderstood series for your show, Feel Your Feeling. So it's like you
I
don't
do.
really know me. You think you do, but you really don't. So I totally get where you're coming from. But I know that your parents have played a big part in, or have played a huge part in your life. Let's talk about one of the things where, aside from your degree, one of the things that is stamped in your name, the Feel Your FeelingZ podcast. I hope that's a great transition. I stuttered that so much,
No, you did that. You
but
did that.
here's the thing I want to start by asking you, because one of the types of questions I love asking are like absolutely ridiculous questions that make no sense, but that's the point of the Oh My Craig in this podcast. So I would so let's use an analogy. Think of those commercials where they promote some sort of medicine or some sort of health thing, where they go, before I took this product, I look like this. After I took this product, I look like this. I feel much better
Mm-hmm.
where I am most of the time. Although there are medicines where you make you feel worse. When it comes
Yeah.
to podcasting, tell me, I guess, a bit, like, tell me, when it comes to going into podcasting, I don't exactly remember when you started this. You might have to educate me on that, but tell me a bit about who Victoria, no, not who, what Victoria was like before podcasting and what Victoria was like since starting Feel Your Feelings. Has there been a lot of like different personalities, or do you feel like still the same person? And I'm struggling to say that. The reason why I kind of slowed down when saying that is like
Mm.
I don't want you to think that like you're more, because like we sometimes struggle with like arrogancy, where it's like when we get an opportunity to interact with people, we think we're better than people. I don't mean that sense, but it's like, for example, for me, I was very hesitant to talk to people. Now with podcasting, it's like I'm not as afraid to talk to people. It's still a concern, but it's like, hey, if you need me to talk to someone, I'll do it. I might get rejected, but I'm okay. So like where do you align with that? Like what's the before and after of starting a podcast?
Yeah. So the Victoria before podcasting didn't like the sound of her own voice that much because this was a school project and it was audio only. So I really was like just I didn't like hearing myself back on tape and having to send it to someone else. Like the first episode demo that I did with a GW student, I sent it back to one of my advisors, and there was an audio burst or audio leap in there. So like that means when you're listening to it back, the audio like rises. I guess the music was too loud, and that I was just it was just so like amateur is the word, because like I was stressing over like all the little details, like the audio has to be right. So I would say she was very meticulous, kind of afraid of her own voice. And transitioning into me now as a podcaster, I I'm still like working on my outreach and trying to reach out to people because I still kind of fear rejection and fear like that people are going to be like, no, like why would I want to be on that show? Or like asking certain people, like if I should ask certain people. So I'm still kind of struggling with that. Like in my mind, I'm still like, yeah, I can do whatever, whatever. But then like the execution part when I'm actually like typing the email, like I like have like analysis paralysis, you know? Um, but I'll say like the Victoria you're seeing now is like more comfortable in her own voice. I may not be able to watch it back immediately, but when I do, I'm like, wait, that wasn't. Ooh. See, look, I'm still awkward. I'm still 100% awkward. But it's not like it's when I'm watching myself back, I'm like, wait, it wasn't that bad. I wasn't that terrible. Like I, I didn't mess up terribly. I'm still here. They laughed. They smiled. They giggled. Like I got some good reactions. So I would say I have evolved in a very good way and I'm still evolving, but have come a long way since then.
Yeah, I really like that answer. And don't worry, I am also a very awkward person to interact with. I think one of the weird criticisms I get from my friends is like when it comes to text messaging, I am too professional. So in that sense where it's like I
Wait, how?
usually
Like do
it
you put like punctuation at the end?
yes, I put periods at the
Yeah.
end of sentences.
Oh.
I remembered
Oh.
I remember one of my friends said LOL. For those who don't know, that means laughing out loud. And I'm like, are you really laughing out loud? And then my friend was like, dude, stop it. So yes, I'm one of those very like professional. I actually, even today, I asked someone if I wanted to hang out with them. And a normal person on a text message would say, hey, hope you're doing well. Would you like to hang out sometime? I know you may be busy, but it'd be really cool to hang out with you. I think the exact text message I sent to this person was, "Hey, I hope you're doing well. Do you have a window for the possibility of hanging out in the next few weeks?" I use the term window. So I am such a weirdo, or I
I
feel like I'm
think
too professional.
I think you're like a corporate texter because there's corporate lingo too, you
Yeah.
know? Like hey, uh hope this email finds you well. I hope this message finds you well today. Do you have a window in your day to hop on a call. Like it's very corporate. There's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes it does stick with you. So it's like having to separate the two identities sometimes. And I think sometimes I still am like podcaster Victoria and then me Victoria. Like me Victoria, like I'm not about to walk up to somebody and be like, hey, do you want to be on my podcast? But like podcaster me, like I will say the original, the early podcaster version of me was like unafraid. I was like, I will email anybody. I'm desperate. I'm hungry. Now I've eaten a little bit and I'm like kind of satisfied. I'm like, but I have to like go back to that hunger to, reach out to people and be curious about them and want to talk to them and not be so in my head too much. And just understanding that a rejection or a no response isn't always a no. It's just like a not right now or a maybe. So,
For sure. And I think the reason why I am like a very corporate or very professional texter is when I interact with, because I've had guests on my podcast where it's not that I went through them. I may have went through their manager, their PR team, their assistant.
yeah,
And so you have to be professional. It's not like, hey, can
their
I
agent.
interview with this person? Like, hey, what's up,
Yeah,
HR person? You
yeah.
can't do that. So because I feel like I interact more on email and I am in contact with people with podcasting, it translates into being a professional texter, which I'm trying to balance that, but no matter how hard I try, I still mess up. And I always will have that one friend that'll go, why do you have a period at the end of the sentence? And I'm like, well, technically that's what I learned in English class. So I don't know. Tell my English teacher not to do that. One of my English teachers did say that. He's like, anytime I text my son and I end with a period, he thinks I'm angry at him. And
Yeah,
so like I totally get it, but I don't know. I don't mind it at that much, but I'll work through it. I'm a work in progress. I'm also a
yeah,
misunderstood person.
yeah. I mean, I feel that. So just be
Now,
yourself.
now, obviously, you've done your podcast. You're still doing it, but what I am curious to know, and I didn't realize how hard it is the strength. Well, if we can use that term, I guess the strength to make one more episode. And the reason why I say that is because there are quite a few things that I guess as podcasters we can struggle with, which is we either don't like the sound of our voice, maybe our idea I'm not. I don't think any idea when it comes to podcasting. I don't think any idea is perfect. It's still a work in progress. But sometimes you feel like
Absolutely.
whether your idea or your vision maybe isn't good enough. One of the recent episodes I listened to on your show was the difference between virality and community, which is a big challenge because as podcasters, hypothetically, we want to reach as many people as possible. But then if we don't have the right views, we think maybe we think our podcast isn't good enough. So
Mhm.
the fact that we feel like we don't have enough views, the fact that maybe we hate the sound of our voice or maybe our idea doesn't work, it's very easy to think that these three things, obviously there's more, but these three things in particular, you might come to the conclusion that your podcast isn't good enough or you want to quit.
Mm.
I don't know when you started your podcast, but I know you're still doing it now because I know you released an episode a few months ago. But what would you say kept or allowed you to continue producing episodes, especially during that early phase where when you're starting out? Because obviously you know more about podcasting now than you did back then, but it's so easy to, at the time to think that, well, I don't have everything figured out. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just gonna quit because it doesn't really I don't think it's gonna go anywhere. What would you say allows you to keep going, especially when you had trouble with your podcast in the beginning?
Hmm. So I started it back in 2021, and so it's going on like 3 years now. And I
Crazy how
think
time has
what
shifted, by the way.
time, yeah, time is flying. The concept was more like a 2020 thing, and then I like officially put it out there 2021, and then all of a sudden we had this mental health surge of like podcasts and shows and like all this holistic wellness start to boom. And I didn't start this show for it to be caught up in a trend. It was just how I was feeling, and I just wanted to talk to people like around my age that kind of was feeling lonely or the same way. And for me, it was just like a fun, creative hobby. I really didn't have much else to do because I graduated. from George Washington in 2021, and I had like a gap year from 21 to this past fall when I got back into school. So I was working in between then, but work wasn't like fulfilling for me. I wanted to like have deep conversations. So I think I got back into it for that reason, just so I could be like creatively stimulated, and engaged. And I think also like I'm a very spiritual person as well. So I would say God guided me during those times, like the Holy Spirit really was like, hey, maybe you should like talk to this person, or maybe you should ask this person. And sometimes, I would get a response back. Other times it was like not right now. So yeah, I would say just a mixture of me wanting to find something to do and like stick to something fun, like how some people have their hobbies. Some people do music, some people do art, design, whatever they do on the side. This was my gig. And funny enough, it's still not like where I want it to be. Because like, how podcasters want to like take their content to the next level and monetize it and come up with these strategies to like sell merch and like put it out there and make it bigger and bigger. Like it wasn't even like about that at first. Like now I do kind of want to look into that. I am looking into that, but it wasn't my intention at first. It was just a hobby.
One of the things I want to talk about when it comes to podcasting is the fact that just because you have a podcast doesn't necessarily mean that you're good at talking to people. And I'm not saying you're not good at talking to people, but I am saying that there is the sense of like when I was getting to know your story, and I think you may have said this a few minutes ago where you talked about how you're like, I guess for lack of a better, I literally forgot what you said, but there's like the sense of like social awkwardness
Mm-hmm.
where yes, you love talking to people, but there are moments where it's like you love talking, but sometimes you worry about saying like the wrong thing, or
Yeah.
maybe you had this idea of, oh, like the idea was good, but the execution was bad. Um, I know that may not be the best explanation, but I would love to ask you because I've opened up about this where I can be socially awkward and yet I have a podcast. And sometimes I do worry. Sometimes there is times, or even during a call, I feel nervous or I will like mess up or I will stutter. I probably have done that already. But for you, what is it like, even though you have that social awkwardness in you? And I'm not using that to degrade you, I'm saying that's a normal thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we're literally putting ourselves
Mm-hmm.
out there in a way. What is it like to have that while having a podcast? Because even that trait can it almost feels like it can limit you from being your best self because it feels like you have to be perfect and it can be a challenge. So I'd love to know like what it's like to I don't and I'm like trying to figure out
Mm-hmm.
how to say this without offending you, but I'm
No,
gonna go
no.
ahead. It's like what is it like being socially awkward and yet still having a podcast?
That's a great question. And it's like asking a singer, like, what's it like being a singer and hating the sound of your own voice? Because I have heard singers, amazing singers, say that about themselves. So I think it's a positive and a negative trait that we have as like creatives because we don't recognize our own creativity. But going back to your question, um, yeah, I do kind of view myself as socially awkward, and I think that has manifested itself into like me being scared or nervous to share episodes with my family, or like extended family. If, like hiding my podcast from them if they say, "Oh, what are you working on right now?" It's like everything but, excuse me, my ring light turned off. It'll be like everything but my podcast, which is not the best thing because like I put my heart into this. This is like something very meaningful to me, but yet I'm still like shying away from like judgment. So I think them like actually seeing my social awkwardness, like if I do stuff, like I stumble on words or questions, and am questioning like, did I ask the right questions here in this episode? Did I say the wrong thing? Did I offend anybody? Did I not say enough? Why is my face like that? Like, why am I not smiling? Because some episodes I'm like I have like weird facial expressions. Like, wait, I never knew I like looked like that. So I think being socially awkward and being a podcaster has only helped to challenge me because it shows that like my voice is still important. Like it's always been there. I just had to give it a space to be heard. Yeah. And I think every time I hit record and I hit upload and I hit post, I'm only giving it more energy and more room to be heard, even if I feel like I should be quiet.
No, I totally get where you're coming from. And it's weird, even on my end, like I can be a socially awkward person, but I try to hide it as much as possible because we are literally recording. And so I think there's a part of you where you can be human in a podcast. Well, actually, you should be a human. I don't want to talk to
Yeah.
robots. But there's also a part where like your guest doesn't know, like the guest, whether it's you or anybody, or even if if someone wants to be a guest on your podcast, they don't know your podcast. And so in a way, they kind of feel more nervous than you do, and so you do, and you don't want to put them in a situation where it's like you. I guess like the thing I'm trying to say is like you don't want to you don't want to put them in a situation where they're more anxious because now it feels like they have to talk on autopilot, whereas you're trying to get them to be like open or and whatnot, but it can be a challenge because it's like you're not doing it, it's hard for them to do it. Like you're
Yeah.
the one driving the car, they're the passenger seat, and
Yeah.
they have every right to freak out if you're swerving in different lanes. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Being a podcast host is kind of like being a flight attendant. Like on the outside, you have to look cool, calm, collected, like have a smiley face, are you good? Do you want any cookies? Like, and like internally though, you're like on a strict checklist, a schedule, a task list. And if you see any discretions, you take mental note, but you don't freak out. You try not to freak out and be like, this isn't a safe space anymore. Gotcha. Like you never want to put someone in that position. At least a good podcaster doesn't put anyone in that position. Afterwards, you feel like, I think I did a good job. I don't think that I exploited that person or made them feel bad or or ruined anything. So I think that at the end is when you can tell if like an episode went well or a whole interaction from outreach to post production like was successful.
How do you define a successful interview slash conversation? Now, here's the thing. I said interview slash conversation because I don't want to do a question and answer and then move on to the next question. I know we talked
Mm-hmm.
about this beforehand where it's like you want to have a question, then the guest gives an answer, but then they may say something where you go, let's dive deeper. I think for a lot of us, it's so like I don't exactly know how to define it. I still struggle with like, okay, as long as it gets X amount of views, that's
I would,
success to me.
yeah, I
How do
was just
you,
thinking that.
yeah, how do you personally define what a successful interview or a conversation goes? Do you feel like it's on the views or do you feel like it's based on the conversations you have with the guest?
Hmm. I used to think it was really on the views. Like, if I only got one view, I was like, that means only one person liked it. Like, and yeah, I think views are still actually important. Like, it does matter, but if you don't get feedback, like, don't get hung up on it. I'm trying to think back to like episodes that I recorded that I thought were really good. I think when I get feedback from like the guests, um, and they say like, "Hey, I thank you for having me on your show. I had a really good time. So and I shared it with so and so. I had some people if they see a review about their episode and then they send it to me. Um, yeah, I think I just go based off of the aftermath. Like if I hear back from them. If I don't, I just hope that they liked that they liked it.
Yeah, I think I can agree with that because I think at the end of the day they can look at your conversation and go like I really enjoyed this or I didn't, because ultimately when you're having a guest you want to make sure that you earn their respect in a way. I know that not everyone will listen to either your podcast or my podcast, but as long as the guest acknowledges that you tried, you did your research, and you had a great conversation, then that's all that matters at the end
Yeah.
of the day. Now, here's one of I mentioned this before, but I did take a hiatus from the podcast because I was analyzing, I was rewatching the tape, I was watching every interview. I was like, okay, what was good? Where did I struggle with? What can I change episode titles and descriptions? I decided to do all that, but there was also a part of me that felt like quitting the podcast because I felt like maybe there comes a point in time where you try so much and yet maybe it's not for you. One of the questions I've asked people is if they lose something, what more do they lose? So for example, if you lose
Mm.
friends, you don't just lose friends, you lose something that you lose, that there's like a deeper thing that you lose. I know there's obviously more to you than just podcasting, but if Feel Your Feelings if you were to stop recording episodes for Feel Your Feelings podcast, knowing that how much the podcast has meant to you in terms of your
Mm.
confidence and just the willingness to share stories from different people, what would
Mm.
Victoria lose if you were to stop doing Feel Your Feelings podcast?
Mm. Mm. I was, I was thinking like respect for myself because I made an agreement with myself and my advisors early on because this was a capstone project for me, like a grad school media project that I would continue this on as a passion project. And they were like, yeah, go for it and conquer, do your thing, and try new things. And it has grown since then. Like I've applied it to be a partner for National Mental Health Action Day, and now like on their website my podcast is one of the partners listed on there, which I'm really proud of. And like thousands of other organizations, like big organizations. um so I say like respect for myself because it's kind of like something that I've created, and that has kind of like I've cultivated, and I've had authentic and genuine connections on here, and I've had guests say like this is necessary for our generation to have these conversations. Like when I saw the name of your podcast, like I've had people, pitch themselves. I'm sure you get people pitch themselves to be on your show, right? Like, hey, I see the title of your show. Can I be on it? Like someone literally did that. Their publicist like reached out to me, and then he reached out to me and he's like, hey, like I saw the name of your show, Feel Your Feelings, and like I knew right away, like I want to be on this podcast. Like, what if that didn't exist? What if I just stopped doing that? Then I truly believe that if you give up on an idea or you don't act on a certain idea, that idea is going to go to somebody else, and that person's going to take it and run with it. And you'll be looking like, that was once my idea. I really should have taken advantage of it while I had it. Like a bird in your hand is better than none at all. So I have something with it. But I guess sometimes afraid of like breaking it loose. It does still kind of feel like a bird in a cage. So yeah, that's like the first time I've ever used an analogy for my podcast. Yeah. Like I'm afraid of what will happen if I open the cage and be like, go free, go free. Like, will it get lost? Will it soar? Will it fall to its death? you know. Um, but yeah, that's an awesome question. And I hope I answered it.
Yeah, and that was a great analogy. I'm glad that you you used that. One thing I do want to talk about, or one more thing about your podcast before we move on to the last portion, is the fact that you have a misunderstood series, and the notion is that you think you know a person, but you really don't. And I know you've also talked about the fact that you can sometimes be afraid of rejection, and all of us can be. I mean, there's no doubt
Yeah.
about it. When it comes to that term, though, personally, even though we embrace it, we can also be anxious or be worried because it's like, because they don't know me, they might use what they think they know and use it against me. Like, in your opinion, do you feel like, if we were to look at like the road, do you feel like you align more to the I'm willing to embrace being misunderstood, or is there a part of you that still feels like you are worried about what other people might think of you? Because I would love to be in a situation where I'm like, you know what, this person can say this about me, but they don't really know me, so I'm not gonna care too much about what they say. because they don't know me.
Mm-hmm.
However, I more so fall into the spectrum of I am really worried what this person is thinking of me right now, whether they rejected me or whether it's like a no. It's like, okay, it on the outside it feels like a rejection or a no, but what if there's something more? What if they decide to paint a picture that I know I am not? Do you get what I mean? So like for
Yeah.
you, do you feel like you embrace being misunderstood, or is there a part of you where you're like, no, I'm scared of what people might think of me? I know you talked about balancing these two, but as
Yeah.
of right now, which one do you feel like you lean towards?
Mm, what was the first one? Because I feel like it's both. The first one was not
Like the first
caring.
one was like, I don't mind being misunderstood. The second is, I'm worried what other people might think of me. Even though I know who I am, I'm worried that they may paint a picture of me. And because of that fear, it's like, it's very hard to be at peace at being misunderstood.
Yeah. I think there's always going to be that fear of misunderstanding. Um, I think I'm still growing through it too. Because like I am 26, but part of me is still like a little kid inside that has feelings and like sensitive emotions. Like I'm super sensitive, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. Like I'm a Leo, and also if you've done your Myers-Briggs and INFJ, so and like what are the stereotypes of the Leo? That we're super independent, that we're courageous and brave and bold and arrogant and loud. That is not true. Like I'm kind of like one of the most sensitive people you'll ever meet, and I don't always express that. Sometimes I do wear my heart on my sleeve. So if someone says something or I think someone is thinking a way about me, like I'll take note of it and I'll keep it in mind. I won't always show it, but in the back of my head I'll be like, they don't like me. They really don't like me. And like I think that's human. Like let's not front that we don't care, that we are so strong, and have walls built up, because it's not always healthy to not acknowledge our feelings. And I think that's where tuning into our feelings is super helpful, and like to be real, like about what's hurting us. But on the other side of it, there's also they don't know me. Actually, they don't know my day-to-day struggles. They don't pay my bills. They don't live with me. So whatever opinion you have of me is in your head. Like whatever version you have of me in your head, kill that, because that's not me. This is the real me right here. You just haven't like met me yet, or you don't want to meet me. Um so I think it's dual. It's dual. And also like I'm into astrology a little bit, like, and my moon is in Gemini. So I think it's natural because Gemini is like a dual sign, and that's like the moon sign is like the behind the scenes version of you. And I'm definitely like that, behind the scenes. And I think that's where the misunderstood thing comes from. It's because a certain part of me externally, but behind the scenes it's like, let me keep you guessing. Let me keep you guessing. Which I kind of like admire. It can be, I think for some people that could be kind of dangerous too, because you never know what side of them you're going to get. And I think it's really important to lead with kindness and be kind to people, because someone can be kind on the surface, but behind the scenes they could be like kind of a snake. They can be two-faced. And then the other way around too. They could seem really mean and really rude, um, and stuck up. But once you get to know them, it's like, wait, you're actually really cool. You just have your guard up a little bit, but I like you. I like you. So I've witnessed both, and I think I've been those two people myself, two other people, if that makes sense. I know it's very like, uh, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know it can be a lot. A couple of questions before I let you go. First, the first one is if there are any other projects that you're working on, whether it's with Feel Your Feelings or anything outside, because I know obviously there's more to you other than podcasting. Are there any other projects that you're working on, or is there anything with Feel Your Feelings that you haven't had the chance to share yet, but you are really excited to? What's kind of going? What's like? I guess. Yeah. Wait. Let me rephrase that question. I just messed up.
Take your
What are some
time.
things? What are some things that you're working on? Are there any other projects that you're working on aside from podcasting, or is there anything that you haven't had the chance to share it with your own podcast that you're kind of excited to share at some point in the future?
Yeah. So with my podcast right now, like I have created like some merch. I created some laptop stickers. I consider them merch, but I redid my logo. My whole brand logo was like a microphone with some headphones sitting on top of it. Very generic, right? So I updated that and I made it into a slogan. So it says "You feel me now" and like these cute bubble letters. So I made laptop stickers. I would like to launch my own shop for my podcast and sell t-shirts and hats and like stress ball keychains. So yeah, I have been working on the designs for that for like t-shirts, and that's something that I wrote like a summer bucket list and I put that on my summer bucket list to do. Um I have a few episodes that I recorded this month that should be coming out in June. So that is a accountability to myself to post them. Yeah, so I should have new episodes coming out in June. And yeah, that is it for now. I'm taking it easy. Like you, I'm also a full-time student. So I'm doing online classes this summer. And yeah, I'm still keeping my podcast in its little cage right now, like the cute bird it is. But at some point, it's gonna fly.
Well, looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Last question. It's a question. It's a, I guess, a signature question that that I've been thinking about asking people. So, what would you say, even though you've had your fair share of successes and then the challenges that you've opened up about, especially when it comes to moving different places, even though even though I know that you're going to do great things and I know there's a lot of exciting things going on, what would you say right now is the hardest thing about being Victoria Makanjuola?
Oh, wow. I want you. Can you answer first?
Great. Yeah, sure. I'd say the hardest thing is balancing
Mm,
everything. I'd say balancing being
yeah.
a college student and then balancing the podcasting. I'd say that's a big challenge because I like to spend a lot of time doing research on a person as much as possible. But when you add more layers or like with school or business, it you don't have as much time as possible. So sometimes you have to make sacrifices. Like I don't listen to as many podcast interviews without a guest as I did before. So it's like, okay, based on the interviews that I have listened to, or based on the information that I do have, this is what I'm gonna work with. Hope it goes well. So I think balance is like the hardest thing.
Mm-hmm.
And also I can get distracted pretty easily. So I would say
Mm-hmm.
that's the hardest thing about being me. So that's how
Wow.
to answer it.
Self-reflection. Okay. I was actually in class last night. So I'm taking a UX class and we had a project. We have a project where we have to create our own avatars. And we literally went through this exercise, like a timed exercise, 90 seconds each, having us describe how would someone describe you? How would you describe yourself? Or how would a stranger describe you, your family and friends? And then how would you describe yourself? So I put strangers would describe me as smart, funny, responsible. My family, responsible, smart. Gee, I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with this. Yeah, like I think describing myself is something that I'm not very good in with words, and I think I'm always a work in progress because I can be kind of hard on myself. So I would say, mm, being being gentle and being more vulnerable with myself and more sensitive. And it's interesting because like my show is called Feel Your Feelings and I'm like sensitive to other people's feelings, but to mine just being more sensitive to my own feelings and vulnerable when like people want to know how I'm doing and just actually like telling them like this is how I'm doing. Cause like sometimes I struggle with telling people like my negative emotions. Like actually, I'm not feeling it. I'm mad today. I don't like it today. I don't like it here today. Or like, I'm feeling sad today. Like, I'm feeling really like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Today is not a good day. Like, I find myself like struggling with that. So I'm not sure what the exact terminology is for that, but I think I myself am just working on, yeah, being more vulnerable.
I
Yeah.
it's a really difficult question, but it's like it's one of those where I think it's important to talk about because we don't know much about a person and we never will. Like I could talk to you every day, but I will never fully understand you because there's just a side that I don't understand. And
It's that
especially with
Gemini moon. It's that Gemini moon.
and especially
Just kidding.
because yeah, and especially because now we are growing up with social media and we see highlight reels of people.
Highlight reels.
So it's like
Yes.
when you see a post about a person, you think, okay, you have an idea, but there's a different side where you go, okay, I may have had the success, I may have had these accomplishments, I may be enjoying some period of time, but there is a part that you don't know me about, and I don't talk about it as much, but I should, and I hope that we get to actually have these types of conversations because it's all about what it's like to be people. And because social media is like, okay, we think we have an idea, but we
Mm-hmm.
actually don't. So there's like that sense of misunderstood, but
Yeah.
a sense of misunderstoodment, if that's a word, but it's
Misunderstanding.
yeah, but it's really important because we don't know what other humans are going through, and we don't know.
Yeah.
We only see stuff based on we only see things based on like what we see on the outside, but there's so many things that we don't know on the inside or that's behind closed doors. And that's why having like I know what you do at your podcast and then obviously with my podcast, the importance of breaking down a person into or disassembling them into like think of like Legos, how you like everything is disassembled and then you want to like build everything to its like perfect image. It's similar to humans where it's like we want to disassemble them and then try to see or try to understand the best version of them because human beings have good and bad experiences. We don't understand
Absolutely.
them, but let's try to understand as much as we can. I know I
Mm-hmm.
kind of sounded like a serial killer when I said disassemble a human being. I don't mean it
No,
that way.
no,
I
no.
don't
We
mean
knew
it
what you
that
meant.
way.
Y'all
But
knew what Hamza meant when he said it. Stop,
but
stop.
it's like let's see based on the information we have, let's try to create the best or the most understanding image possible so that we just let them know that they're a human being and there's nothing good or there's nothing wrong with being imperfect or misunderstood in that case.
Yeah. That was beautifully said. I love that. I think you summed that. I think you summed that right up.
Well, I still stuttered and made some mistakes, but you know what? I'll be embracing that. But
Yeah.
Victoria, I just want to say thank you so much for joining the podcast. I know you are a busy person with school and with everything, but nevertheless, it's always great talking to you, and I hope we get to meet in person someday.
Thank you for having me, Hamza, and all the best with your show. Oh my curry goodness. Really appreciate you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. If you guys like what you saw, be sure to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram at the OMCG Podcast for more information on guests, preview clips, and more. Please continue to support this podcast in the future, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next episode.